Welcome back to Real-ationship Goals, a podcast all about exploring the realities and complexities of healthy relationships. Real-ationship Goals is a project of the Prevention and Education team at the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual violence or harassment and is seeking support services or needs more information, links to resources and our hotline number can be found in the description. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of their organizations or affiliates. All right. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Real-ationship Goals. We are so excited to have you with us. I'm Kyla, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Ariana, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm Elsie. I also use she, her pronouns.
I am Sol, and I use she, her, ella pronouns.
Awesome. So we are so excited to be back with another one of our community partner spotlight episodes. We are joined today with Sol Bautista, who is going to share a little bit with us about a little bit of anything, a little bit of everything. We're going to see where the conversation takes us, but I would love to just kind of kick us off, Sol, with just asking you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I do a lot of things. I think that the biggest role that I play in the community is with Creative Waco invited me to be the Director of Professional Development and Community Outreach. I'm a psychologist and I'm an actor. Acting is actually what brought me to Waco. There's a short film that I did in 2021, and we won HBO Latino Pick of the Year. And so we toured for the film festival that happens here. And that's how I met Fiona. And when she told me kind of the vision that she had for this curriculum to come to Waco, it was like a dream come true from my 17-year-old self that I did a presentation on when you graduate high school, we have like a model UN thing, and you pitch like, how would you solve all the problems in the world? Mm-hmm. And so I did, like, I was going to bring all of the billionaires and all of the creative people together, and they were going to come up with a plan to fix all the problems in the world one at a time, right? But like having all the money and all the creativity. And so pretty much when Fiona told me the vision that she had for the professional development that we were going to offer had to do with that. And I was like, I get to do that, like, full time. So we started a partnership with, first it was called Air Collaborative, and this curriculum has been on a national level. But then we started kind of thinking about the necessities and particular, get romantic.
Never had that happen before.
the specific things that, or the needs that Waco had. So that allowed me to also get even more creative with, okay, let's expand this curriculum and shift it and like move it and all the things. So for the last 2 years, that's what I've been doing. I was living here in Waco for 2 years, just moved back to Austin. So I work remotely. And I'm teaching a class at Baylor. And I am also right now promoting the first film that I am in as producer. And it's doing really good. It's a big bragging piece that I feel, not only for the film festival, like the Waco Indie here in Waco, but for the collaboration behind the film, the writers, the actors, everyone. It's a Waco-made film. It's called The Heart of Texas, and it's doing really good. So that's a little bit about a lot of it that I'm doing everywhere.
And I guess just real quick, so did the Heart of Texas film, did that debut at the Waco Film Festival this summer? Or I feel like I remember reading about it somewhere.
We actually went, since it's a film that they won the script competition 2 years ago. We cannot kind of compete because then there's like a bias like issue. So we did show though. We did show it here. Yeah.
Awesome. I would say I thought I remembered seeing that.
Yes.
Oh, that's sad. So on this podcast and just kind of in general at the Advocacy Center, we are all about things like healthy relationships and even just relationships in general. We are willing to talk about the nitty, the gritty, sometimes the messy and uncomfortable stuff in relationships. But I guess
what I'm wondering is, like, what role do you think that creativity plays in relationships? What does that look like? It maybe in healthy ways. I don't know if it maybe even manifests in unhealthy ways sometimes. Just
I think that, yeah, like from all standpoints, right? Like, I guess as a professional, like in psychology, like you have to understand a lot of thought processes from what really comes from the imagination, right? Like when you think about panic attacks or jealousy and or just controlling, like so many things had to do with the stories that you're playing. So you kind of create some of the things. Sure, some things are justified. Sure, sometimes previous experiences do lead you to see a pattern in some things. So I think creativity and imagination really is embedded in the human condition. So it's in everything. And the way that I like to think of my work as a psychologist is like to be able to leverage it and utilize it in creative, positive ways, right? Like the same way that something can be horrible, devastating, terrifying, and all the worst can be amazing and incredible and peaceful and joyful and all the things. So it's just the full thought process of how do you shift it um, based on like previous lived experiences and or like trauma, right? Like I do have a specialty on EMDR therapy, and just the way that Francine Shapiro's framework for the entire theory is fascinating to me. I feel like the vast majority of the schools of thoughts in psychology come from males, as the rest of the things in the world. And so the patriarchal structure and or the male gaze informing behaviors for females and or of females. It kind of always kind of bothered me a little bit, but there was not that many school of thoughts or psychologists that were as prominent and as known as Francine Shapiro. Like, to be honest with you, in Mexico, there's still people that don't even know about this type of therapy. I don't know that I would have had access to it if I was not a bilingual person, right? Like to read the curriculum and to do the past all the things. So for me, another piece that is very informative of a female creating this curriculum and this modality of trauma-informed therapy for healing has a lot to do with creativity. Like you use a lot of like flashbacks or creating movie scripts and or like doing like body scans on like stories that you're like reliving in your brain. So it's a long answer to I think creativity and imagination are exactly how you experience life, right? Like every when I think about there was a moment in the police departments that they had guided interviews for people, and then there was a whole backlash against them because you end up kind of planting things in people's memories, which you already the memory that you remember is already also biased, right? Like nobody remembers factual anything, even when you watch a film you can see the same thing from so many different angles and from so many different intentions. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I love psychology too. I think that human behavior reads that. And I think women specifically, since we are the creators of life, I feel like there's a different attunement to how do we envision things and how do we like to think of things. So yeah.
thank you. Obviously, I definitely know set length, I would say, of response. I kind of gave you an essay prompt of a question. So I was and I could listen for even for forever. I feel like that's so EMDR was created by a woman. I had no idea.
Yes,
That's so cool.
yes. Her name is Francine Shapiro, and I think the official kind of like launch happened in 1983, which is the year that I was born. It didn't become mainstream. Didn't become mainstream, I think, until like the 2000s. One of the biggest things is that she was firefighted VA, so it was trauma was only supposed to happen to people that went to war. Like those are the people that experience trauma. And so then when Francine started doing the work with the VA office, it was like this is actually this needs to go wider. But it is.
That's so cool. That's so interesting. EMDR is still something that I'm continuously learning more about, I think, but I am always just a little bit more fascinated by it every time I learn something new. And I think that's the most fascinated I've been, and like that's a big chunk of something to be fascinated by, I think. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
Even with you talking about like how us as human beings, like our imagination is very like impactful towards us and how we do things and how we experience things in the world. Like when you come into contact with people and trying to like help them navigate of how that works within themselves, like is there any interactions where it's like it's kind of more harder for them to view it in a brighter, brighter light instead of just like, oh, I feel like you're trying to tell me how I have to feel instead of like being more open.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is exactly like the craft of being a good therapist, a good counselor, a good listener is how to guide the person, right? Like I think there's so many mythical things about what a psychologist does. There's even actually differences from the way that psychology gets utilized and implemented in Mexico and in the US. So I do think that it's the educational piece is super important because I feel like a lot of times when you go seek help or support with something, there is a lack of having language on how to express something that's happening. So it requires a lot more guidance sometimes. But the hardest ones are the ones that are very much part of the belief system of the person, right? Because that is where it starts feeling like, oh, you're telling me I should feel this. You think I should do that. You are telling me that I'm wrong. You're like, and there's like this starts like kind of like the blaming part, which I really love how EMDR also has so much language to nothing is personal, right? Like that is said. And so for me, those are very telling moments of we're tapping into something good when you start to fight back. Because it's something that is a defense mechanism, right? Like the brain or fear in general is designed to protect you, right? So it activates when it feels like it's been threatened. And that's how you start like, okay, guards up. And so when that happens, it tells me that there is something there that we need to like dig in a little bit more. And yeah, like I think I've had experiences with clients that have both like zero emotional literacy and it's challenging, but then I have people that have read all of the psychology, self, but like all the things. And so they yourself feel so much resistance there, right? And I think because, again, from the perspective of thinking ways on how you frame as a psychologist or a therapist your work, my biggest purpose is like the healing, right? Like we're going to use any and all the tools. And my job is to put myself out of a job. Like my job is to equip you with all the tools that you need to navigate life with all of the ups and downs. And then I'm just on the sidelines as a supporter. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you definitely did.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
It's also very familiar, I think, for us, the working yourself out of a job idea, because that's exactly what we do in prevention too. Like ideally, like the big picture ticket is like a world without violence. Like that's what we're working to, in which case we would no longer do it. And then we get to do something else. I don't know what, but someday that day comes and then that'll be fun. But I can definitely relate to that. I guess I was also just thinking a little bit about, so you mentioned, I feel like a little bit ago, also like the role that creativity plays in healing. I feel like, so I guess I'm just trying to think of if you would be willing to share like either different like, techniques or different ways and roles that creativity plays like in that healing process.
You know, I can talk about this for 10 hours. So it's hard. Definitely, I'll give you an example and then I can share a few. Like when 2016 presidential election happened, it was, I was still a green card holder. So I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Guadalajara. I learned English when I was 25 years old. And I didn't move to Texas until 2009, I think. So just the process of being an immigrant is already so many complexities that I wasn't aware, right? then there's all of the layers of all the things that I didn't know people think of me when they see me, that also like play like identity shifts, like it's a whole thing. But in 2016, everything got so bad that I was like, I need to do theater again. Like I need to go back into acting and performing because that heals me. Like creating heals me, and creating that character. Again, like I see so much of psychology when it comes to the performing arts, and any form of art or creativity. But the practices that I have mastered, that I have like published things or that I've done repetitively that I know are very effective, is journaling, and like journaling true or writing fiction, like just writing. There's so much that happens not only for people that love typing, great for you, good for you, do it with pencil and paper. Because there's so much connection that the brain does to putting an idea or a thought or a word and then passing it through your hand to deliver it to an inanimated object and then to trace a pattern in a paper that is a word. So there's so much neuroscience and like aspects of that is so important. And I've done it with kids. I've done it with inmates. I've done it with women escaping situations of violence, and I've done it now with community members here. I like just to work different workplace culture and things, and the impacts are always positive. They're always transformative, and they are always soothing too. So that's a massive one. Writing in all and any forms. Performing in the sense like if you don't want to go to acting or if you're not an improv person, like doesn't matter. But like being attuned to your body, right? Like if you do gardening, like think of your body when you're gardening. Do you kneel? Do you stand? What do you do with your hands? What does it feel to touch the soil? What does it feel to get cut by a leaf or by something? Like the experiencing of your body as something that really creates the communication between what you're experiencing with the world is something that is so trivialized. Is that a word? Like trivialized. That is completely the opposite. Like it is not trivial at all. Like for me, one thing that I notice people that are starting making jumps in healing is when they are more attuned to their bodies. Like you have to have full ownership of your body from your toes to your hair. And then it's a lot harder to let people transgress that because you really respect your body and then you really know what it does for you. So performing in that sense of becoming aware of your body. And lately, specifically, I had the unfortunate event of having a breakup of a relationship of 7 years and got really good at meditating, and in all of the forms, like walking meditations, like action meditations, guided meditations, music, like I tried all the formats. But now I think that I can effectively do it whether I have something or not. And I think, again, going back to like, the people just imagine you like sitting like, it isn't that. That's absolutely not it. Sometimes like cooking is a meditation for me. Like touching the food and like putting an intention and like all these things. So those will be the 3 actions that creativity have guided me in intuition to do them for myself. But now that I've done them also with other people and I see the impact that it has, I'll say those are top 3. And you can get as creative as you want,
Because I think healing is such like a personalized journey, and like and one person's healing journey from one thing won't even necessarily look the same as their heal is the same person's healing journey from something else.
Exactly.
And I just think it's just so interesting.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that about like there's something that I've shared a few times that I don't think I would have been aware as a psychologist unless I experienced my immigration story and experienced COVID and experienced George Floyd and experienced teaching in classrooms in America, right? When I was given the guidance the guidelines for what you need to do in elementary school to prepare the kids in case there's an active shooter situation. I had a panic attack reading the guidelines. I was like, you want me to tell 6-year-olds like this? And we have to rehearse I was like, this is insane. So the importance of mentioning that is because I now strongly believe like individual trauma calls and requires for individual healing, right? Like you either do it or you don't. Like, but it's a choice. But that's on you, right? Like it's personal. But collective trauma calls and requires collective healing. And I have not found a vast number of collective healing practices that are implemented or that are even considered as such, you know? And I think it's very, very important to be aware of that. Like, again, I don't think I would have been as cognizant of it until I had to shift my identity from I'm not an amazing psychologist that was brought to Texas to work because I'm so cool and so intelligent and so great. I'm a brown Mexican immigrant, you know. So this story that I sold myself of people from Texas came to Mexico to offer me this job and I moved here. That's like who I am. That's my identity of that. And then something happens that the entire mass tells you, oh no, you're a Mexican brown immigrant. And so I had to navigate that being a psychologist and having a support system and like having classes and having groups, you know, and it's hard. So then people not even being aware of how much the impact of the collective does to you is like super important to me to bring awareness to, because we don't talk about it enough, I don't think. And I think to what you were saying about a world without violence, we really need to understand all of the forms of violence that we do and we receive, right? I think it's a very, very important conversation. But again, I can talk for hours and hours and hours. But yes.
I mean, you're in good company for that hours and hours conversation. I feel like we spend a lot of our work days having those conversations. Oh, yeah. I guess that just also just makes me think more on just the work that is being done, like in the community. Like I know you said that a lot of the forms of like collective healing aren't necessarily always recognized or given, especially probably the recognition that they deserve for their merit. Also, because I think there's probably so many different influences in this, but I also think that how frequently like collective healing techniques and having a hard time thinking of the right words. I don't want to say like ideas, that's not quite right. But I guess like techniques also come from a lot of times like different like, cultural like groups as well. So like I think of especially a lot of like Native American like indigenous groups. Like I think of like circle groups and things for like restorative healing, things like that. But I guess are there any particular areas of collective healing that you see being done in Waco, or and potentially maybe not, but maybe there is something done, or is there anything that I guess you would like to see more, like in our?
I really think that being able to do this type of professional development that we all kind of created, put together. Fiona wants me to take credit. I can take some of the credit, but like it really is influenced by working with an amazing group of women, right? Like, and we are very diverse. Like Fiona's from Scotland, and like from Europe. Stephanie's from Africa. She was born and raised in Zimbabwe. We have a couple of Wacoans. I am from Mexico, and we have another immigrant in the team that is like he is like fully bicultural in a different way than I am, and so that really allows to have different lenses and different approaches to many different things. So the workshops, like I would love if it could become like a community thing that kind of like my dream that I had, you know, like getting the people that really all they care about is money, great for you. And getting the people that care about a specific topic or can't find consensus on a topic that they want to focus on. and figuring out a way to do something about it, right? Like I think it's really easy to just talk and have a lot of opinions on how everybody needs to fix everything. And it's not until like you do something that you see how much it takes, how long it takes, how hard it is, how exhausting it is. So for me, becoming a doer, so having more of those professional developments, that's not a plug for you to hire me, but it is, but it's not, but it is. I think that also Creative Waco doing the Levitt Amp concert series, which was an activation also of getting into the east side of Waco, which there's so much history that I had to inform myself of when I moved here. That is very devastating, you know? So when you are able to create an activation that brings to a space that has a lot of sadness and sorrow and grief to bring joy and laughter and children and people from the community together, that's important. And I know like the town is about to celebrate 175 years or something like that. And for me, I don't know if you guys know this, but like the conversations with some of the Wichita tribes are like starting to come back or like having more visits. I think that right, like involving people in the community of knowing the roots. I think that people are very, very much in this train of like, I didn't do that, like, or the past, we need to forget the past. We need like all these things. And now it's actually the opposite. And I really think that the more you know, the better informed and aware you are, like how not to make the same mistakes. And nature, I think that like Waco is very blessed in the landscape that it has, and the water and the trees and everything. And nature has so many answers, you know, like I was giving a talk for a group of people from the city that I did a training with. And I said, like, I don't think that there is like a pine tree that says we need to go kill all the magnolia trees because they're stuck, they're too pretty. Like, they don't do that. Like, a frog is not gonna be like, we should kill all the crickets, like, because we need to eliminate the like. Nature coexists in the beauty of its diversity in so many realms that we don't. And it's almost going back to what you said, right? Like, I think language is such a beautiful, powerful thing. And it's also the most damning thing, you know? Because it's what keeps you in prison by yourself. Like, another practice that I will say, because I am very spiritual, I'm a recovering Catholic. Religion is something that has a lot of very good intentions, but it also is a space to gather. And when you gather as unhealed people, it almost becomes more problematic. So having spaces where people can just start becoming aware, even in spaces where you go pray, right? Like, I think that is a practice that I know happens here a lot. And I don't know that necessarily all the time is on that lens. But having those conversations, just the questioning is important. One of my students at Baylor share about how important it is to even just have a space where you can question something. And it was so profound to me when she shared it, like, because it is. I'm not saying I'm right, you're wrong. You need to do it the way I do it because this is perfect and yours is not. But being able to question something is extremely important. Yeah. Long answer. Sorry.
Oh, no. But I definitely feel like I'm hogging up airtime with my questions. So I definitely, once again, just want to see if I don't have any other questions. No, I'm just like in awe right now. I can listen to her talk all day. Really sit here just like, yes, yes, yes. But I think even with your Baylor student coming up to you and saying like how it is so important for us to have spaces in our community where people can question things without, you know, receiving backlash, and just like understanding like this doesn't have to be problematic. It's just understanding that we have different perspectives from one another, but we can coexist with one another in the same space. We don't have to be separated.
You don't have to go over there and over here and just like form different cliques or anything like that. We can all just exist into one space. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And you just made me think of something that was super interesting. I was very lucky and honored that Tony Shelton and Rocco Holtz have something or had something that was weekly. This called Safe Space Sundays. And I was invited. And I love the space. I love what they created with that group. I think it's extremely important. That's another type of collective healing. Like it's a group that comes together to challenge each other, to share with each other, to whatever. But this specific occasion, they were talking about jealousy and about like if you're in a couple, if the partner can have like female friends or the partner can have male friends, right? Like, and everybody was in consensus that was a no. Like you can't, because like you cannot trust the women and you cannot like it was like this whole thing, right? And I was like, cool. And so I got to the point because I was also during my breakup time, right? Like so that's another identity shift. I like to become single again at 41 years old is different. So then I said, that's the question. And I said, like, so like I'm not gonna become friends with any of y'all. And they're like, what? I am a single 41-year-old woman, and obviously I want to hook up with your boyfriend or with your girlfriend. So like, and they were like, it was everybody was in consensus and everybody was agreeing and everything was flowing and everything was great and everybody was in true agreement that was a fact, right? And so when I voiced that, then everyone was like, oh, and then it kind of like it makes you question, because sometimes it's not even about questioning someone else, but it's someone posting a question. And how does that even challenge you to, Like I know that in my own therapy process of healing from my breakup, I've had to also redefine who and what I want to be as a partner, if and when I choose to date someone again. Like it's a full falling apart, breaking open, and then what do I want to put back together, or what do I need to let go? What is not important for me in a relationship anymore? So yeah, it was really interesting because I was a perfect example. Everybody was like, I was like, I'm not gonna be friends with any of you, and they're like, So to see themselves like, oh, this thing that I've been saying and preaching and supporting and agreeing and still solid on it might not be quite right. Yeah.
I feel like one of those things where it can be so easy to say like, yeah, this is what I think, this is what I believe in theory, but then whenever reality or whatever practice comes into play, it's like, oh, wait, that actually isn't realistic, or maybe that's not healthy, or that doesn't make sense. So it's just, I feel like also just so important to have all of those different perspectives, which is also in turn why it's so important to have friends and to have diverse friends that have different experiences and perspectives that can help you make better, more well-rounded decisions. I think such. Yeah, that is a very good example. I think for sure. Yeah, I definitely just want to be mindful of our times. So I would love to ask that you just share with us ways that folks can get connected with you, keep up with what you're doing, what all you got going on.
I have a lot going on. I think very exciting for everyone on the creativity end and on something that is definitely Waco made, that I'm super proud to be part of that project. The Heart of Texas is a short film that is doing really, really well. And the beauty of the film, I really think that we were able, the director is phenomenal. Gregory Kasnick is amazing. And it was a very beautiful way of expressing a very uncomfortable situation. There's a singer-songwriter from Waco that is about to have the break of her career. And there is an undocumented worker that works with her. And they happen to collide in a moment. And the question kind of opens to who deserves the right to pursue happiness. And so if you want to know more about the film, I mean, I'm happy sharing my Instagram is at Sol Bautista and the number 8. And I am posting also like different speaking engagements. I'm going to be talking for MCC, the McLennan Community College, has a summit that I'm super honored that they picked me to do the workshop. It's a full day thing with leaders in education that I'm super excited about. So that's a way to kind of follow what I'm doing, or different spaces where I'm going to speak. I'm also happy to be invited to speak at different spaces. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, or I am happy to.
Well, I think we'll transition into our relationship goal, which I have for us this week. So this week, I just want to encourage each of us, but also all of you out there listening or watching in, to just kind of like, as we mentioned there at the end, to take the time to really examine and think about, like, who are you spending time with? Like, who are your friends? Because, I mean, more than likely, your friend group is wonderful, I'm sure, but really take time to make sure that you have access to diverse perspectives, that you're not just hearing the same kind of thing over and over again, and you're not just spending time with people that have lived like the same lived experiences as you, the same perspectives as you, but really try and diversify, I think, your input and your perspectives. So that's my challenge for this week. And then Ariana has our recommendation for this week.
Yes. So my recommendation is kava. If you're in the Waco community and you like Mediterranean food, try kava. It's refreshing. Really good. That's what I got leftovers.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sol, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, for listening, for watching. We're just so glad that you're here, as always. And we will be back with another episode next week. But in the meantime, if you are just wanting more content from the Advocacy Center, you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Advocacy Waco. Or if you're really wanting some more P&E content, you're wanting a little bit more prevention in your life, you can follow us on Instagram at ACCBC_Waco. But in the meantime, we'll see you next week. Bye. Yay!
Thanks so much for tuning in to Real-ationship Goals. This episode was produced by the Prevention and Education Department of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. Interested in more content from P&E or the Advocacy Center? You can follow us on Instagram at ACCVC_prevention or on Instagram and Facebook at Advocacy Waco. Be sure to like this episode and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Bye.